Hey, it's your girl, Harmony, and this is episode 11 of Harmony and Friends, casual conversations about art and business. If you are catching the replay, so you're watching the video later on YouTube, or you are listening to it on YouTube podcasts, for example, then skip ahead to the 3-minute mark, because that is where we actually start the conversation with the artists. We have 3 incredible artists with us today. We have David Nichols-Rice from Ricecle Cards. He's going to correct me if I said that wrong. Natacha Pope from Coco Natasha, and Melissa Western from Western Sketch. These are 3 artists that have experience exhibiting at trade shows with their product-based businesses as an artist. And so I'm really looking forward to starting the conversation with them soon. We have 2 more minutes to go until then, and if you are here live with us while we are recording this podcast, then please let us know in the meantime in the chat, what is your biggest thing? What is the thing that you cannot figure out, or you cannot decide on, or you just don't know how to answer the question to figure out whether or not you should be displaying at a trade show as an artist? What is that big question you have in your mind? Please let us know, and we'll try to incorporate some of those comments into the show later. Just a quick word of warning though, if you do put in a question, I may display it, including your picture and your username. So that will be on the YouTube live stream. But don't let it hold you back, because these artists have so much authentic, helpful information to share. So let's do that. 1 more minute to go. Talk to you soon. Hey, welcome to today's live stream. I'm Harmony, and this is the 11th episode of Harmony and Friends, casual conversations about art and business. Today, we are talking with 3 incredible artists who have some experience with exhibiting at trade shows. Now, a few weeks back, we had a conversation where artists were talking about exhibiting at markets, but this is different. This is business to business, not business to consumer. So you're talking about exhibiting in front of buyers for large national chains, small boutique shops, and so forth. So a really interesting topic. But before we jump into that, I just want to level with you and be real. I'm a little sick, so I'm going to try to do very little talking in comparison to my usual interjecting in the conversation. And you're also going to see something like this now and then, which is when I'll mute myself and blow my nose. So I'm at the stage of the toilet paper cold, like all the tissues in the house have run out. That is how bad this cold is. But let's get to the topic of the day and welcome our artists and introduce them. I can't wait. Here they are. Hello. Welcome
Hello.
to the show.
Hello.
I'm so glad to have you here. I was just told the weather is incredible where you're at. I'm a little jealous. Thank you for coming inside and doing the live stream anyway. All righty, let us kick it right off. David, I'm going to start with you there at the top. I would love to hear a little introduction from you. Just a minute, if there's anyone on the live stream that doesn't know about you, your art, your company, tell us a little about it.
Thank you so much. So I'm David from Ricecle Cards. You did get it right in the introduction video. Very few people do. The name actually comes from an amalgamation of mine and my husband's last name. So I was Nichols before we got married. He's Rice. And we used Ricecle throughout our wedding and everything. And I used it for the brand. So that's where that comes from. No one knows how to pronounce it unless I tell them. I'm based in Clevedon, which is a small town just outside of Bristol in the southwest of England. I'm in my 4th year of the company. I've done tons of trade shows. I used to work for another publisher before, so I've been in the greeting card industry for about 10 years. So I've done plenty of trade shows. But yeah, on my own for about 4 years now.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm really excited to hear about your experience then. Natasha, how about you?
So I've been running Coco Natasha, my stationery / design business, since 2015. But I've only recently delved into the world of wholesale and trade shows. So I would still say I'm quite new and looking at it from like a fresh perspective and very much still learning. I've done 2 trade shows, my first one in 2020. And it was the wrong time. Like that was just before COVID. So It's been a very steep learning curve ever since.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's rough. I often interview artists and we'll get like, oh, 2020, it was great timing because I started an online business or something. But you did the opposite. You went to the trade show where all the stores were shutting down. Oh, that's really unfortunate. I'm still excited to hear how it's gone since then. Melissa, welcome. How about you?
Oh, hi. Thanks for asking me. So I'm Melissa. My product-based business is Western Sketch, and I'm an illustrator. So I paint with watercolors, and I use my illustrations for greeting cards predominantly, but I also do gift wraps and notebooks. So my kind of business evolved after I had kids. I did illustration at uni, which was about 20 years ago now. And then I went into the world of retail, and I worked in retail for 15, 16 years. And I was actually a buyer for 12 years.
Cool.
Before then I had kids, and then I started picking up my illustration again and kind of have merged the two. So I kind of have created a product-based business. So I've kind of used that background a little bit to help me with that. But obviously the bit I'm really passionate about is obviously the illustration side, but obviously it's very business led now. But yeah, so I've been doing this for 5 years now is when I started sort of selling my cards, but I've started very small, just on like markets, an Etsy shop. And then I did my first trade show about 18 months ago. And that's when I started wholesale. So I'm quite new to trade shows as well myself. I've just done 2, so it'll be really helpful for me as well, I hope.
That's cool to have a very unique angle. Being a buyer, you might have some extra tips for us too.
Yeah, I really love that you've had that experience from both sides, because I often wonder what the buyers are doing all day. So yeah, I guess it's really good to have that retail experience and buying experience, so you kind of know what challenges those people are facing and how you can really fix their issues and challenges.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know as myself, just from being in the like a buying background, trade shows are a really good place to just come and get your buying done. So it's a very busy job. And that was a good time. I guess like for us as well as exhibitors there, it's a focused time where you can, you know, that's your focus. You're there to sell, to meet retailers, to meet shops. And as a buyer, you're there to find this, you're both there for the same reasons. And you kind of want to, you know, everyone's busy. So trade shows are a great opportunity to sort of, for both of you to get lots done, really.
The way you describe it, it just made me think of like speed dating. I don't know why. Alrighty, let's jump to one of our questions here. We're going to do like a setting the scene round where each of you answers this question, just so everyone watching has an idea of your current status. So we will start with you, go back around, Melissa. What income streams do you have from your art?
So wholesale is probably my biggest income stream now, but it's not huge. I'm sort of still building on that. So I've at the moment got about 50 stockists. Obviously, they don't all order at the same time, so it's sort of ad hoc with that. I also do markets, so I've got one tomorrow. So I take, obviously, just go to meet my customers at craft markets, local markets to me, where I live. I have an Etsy shop, and then I have my own website. So I've kind of got a few income streams, and they all sort of similar. Obviously, wholesale is the biggest one for me.
And they're all for the products. Okay.
All for product based. Yeah, all product based. Yeah.
Natasha.
So my biggest income stream will probably be Etsy, followed by my own website, so on Shopify, and I sell my greeting cards, my prints, and most recently sweaters on there with my illustrations on. And then I'm not on the high street with the same sort of products, but I find there's a different sort of audience not on the high street. So people that come to me via Etsy and my website don't necessarily come from not on the high street. So it's nice to have the both. And then I have Patreon and YouTube. And then I have the smaller ones like Redbubble and Scribbler and Thoughtful. So I'm a bit of everywhere.
Interesting. Yeah, no, it's just interesting hearing the difference. So you have product-based, but also other things like Patreon. In addition. Very interesting. Thank you. David.
So wholesale is my biggest revenue stream. So I have my own wholesale website, and then I'm on a few different trade platforms as well, like Fair, Ankle Store. So other people can kind of find me through that, which has been really cool for America, for example. So on Fair, I get a lot of American retailers order through there. So that's cool. I have an online shop. It doesn't really produce very much. So I don't really pump much energy into it. I have an Etsy shop, again, a couple of orders a day. It's not really my primary focus. I've got a few cards on Thoughtful, which is a nice little, that pays a couple of the bills. So that's cool. And then it is wholesale, but I also work with a few distributors internationally as well. So that's really beneficial as well, because that's, where a lot of bulk orders can go. Like, I don't really work with retailers in Australia. I work with the distributor instead. So yeah,
it's cool. That's very interesting to hear that international angle too. Very cool. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to ask you to continue with the next question right away, David, which is, when did you exhibit at your first trade fair with your own company? And how many years had you been in business at the time?
So I launched my company at January 2020's Top Drawer.
Wow.
So I've been working away on designing, and I launched the company at the show, and then I had 2.5, maybe 3 months at a stretch of blissful fun before the whole world shut down. It was a really good introduction to the company, and I love doing the trade show, but obviously I didn't do another trade show for another 18 months after that. So I've just gone into my 4th year.
Thank you. So you had that unfortunate timing too. Wow.
Yeah, it was not fun. I had to pivot very quickly. I obviously, I kept wholesale open, but then I had to quickly pivot to B2C, business consumer. And I tried to diversify my business a lot. So I was selling like letterbox gifts on my website, new baby gifts, that kind of thing. So I was buying a few other bits and pieces locally. So I was buying really nice chocolate bars locally and pairing them with a card. So I had to sort of pivot to do that during COVID before wholesale sort of came back.
Wow. That's impressive. And you made it. You're still here.
No, just about.
That's not so easy. I mean, with an entirely new company, that's really tough. Natasha, you alluded to it a little bit. Similar timing for you?
Yeah, so I was at Spring Fair in 2020. I think that was in the February.
Yeah.
And that was my first ever. I was very, very naive going into it because I hadn't actually visited a trade show before that. I just thought, yeah, let's do it. It's a great idea. I know what I'm doing. I'm fine. And when I was there, I know I should have done a lot more research before just diving head first into it. Like, I was so unprepared and naive, but in a way it sort of helped with my confidence. I think not knowing what you don't know is good. And now that I know that I don't know enough, I'm less confident in a way, sort of thing. It's there's so much more that I know I need to learn. So in a way it worked for me, but if I could, go back and do a lot more research and work, then obviously I would. But yeah, and then obviously lockdown and everything happened. So I thought it must just be bad timing to go into this sort of the business. So I focused on Etsy and everything that I do usually. And yeah, it was just a case of following people up constantly and waiting for the shops to reopen.
You already had a bunch of income streams, right? So it was not the end of the world in that sense.
I found that greeting cards in particular, direct to customers, picked up quite a lot during 2020 because we couldn't see each other. So people were sending cards to their significant others, and I was writing all the messages on the insides of the cards and sending them. So it was lovely, but strange.
Thank you for sharing. Melissa, how about you?
So I did my first trade show share. That was in 2021, and that was just after lockdown. So I kind of had the contrast experience of I think it was the first trade show after. I think we were allowed to, I think it was the first trade show that was after lockdown and I did Top Draw. Sorry, that's a long-winded way of saying it. So it was the show, the amount of exhibitors there were, I think it was quite, I can't think of the word, undersubscribed, but under, what I mean, they hadn't filled all of the space there. So I think for me, it was beneficial because there wasn't so many other greeting card businesses there, but there was a lot of visitors to the show. So I think my initial first show was positive experience. Yeah, so I was but I've done another one since then, and I've had sort of a different experience from that. So it's interesting to compare them.
Okay. Well, that is actually my next question. So you can go right into that one, which is, which trade fairs have you exhibited at? So Top Drawer London.
Is it me? Sorry, or who?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, so I did Top Drawer London, which was the autumn winter show, in 2021, and then I did PG Live, which is Progressive Greetings Live, which is just all greeting cards, and I did that last summer, so that was in June 22, and that was quite different because it was obviously I don't know, Top Drawer is there's a lot of, it's not just a greeting card trade, it's not just a greeting card trade show. So there's homeware and fashion, food, there's a big mix of, so it's a good trade show for small independent shops to come to who want to buy products to fill their shops from different categories, whereas Progressive Greetings is predominantly greeting cards. So I think it attracts probably a slightly different customer. Obviously, you'll still get your smaller shops that maybe want to have greeting cards, but they're not able to buy obviously the other products. So I think it's quite interesting in how the two work. And obviously there's so many. I mean, I don't know how many. I know David has done PG as well. Yeah. I don't know how many hundreds of greeting card publishers are there, but there's a lot.
It's loads. Yeah, it's loads.
Quite intimidating, actually. That obviously there's very established people, and it's sort of it's like really eye-opening, but really interesting.
It's kind of easier to drown a little then, I guess, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing those too. Natasha, how about you?
So after I did Spring Fair in 2020, I then signed up to Top Draw because whilst I was at Spring Fair, all my neighbour exhibitors were telling me that I should do Top Draw instead of Spring Fair. So that's what I did. And that was in 2022, I think. It was supposed to be in January, but it was postponed to February because of COVID. I think that was in 22. And I found Top Draw a lot more intimidating. I don't know whether it's because I already had experience from Spring Fair, knew what to expect, and I knew that everyone there was established and doing really well, and people go there all the time, and I still felt like a newbie. But yes, that was an experience, and I'm glad I didn't do it alone. So I had my boyfriend to help me. But yeah, it was much better for me than Spring Fair. I'm not sure whether it's because I knew what to expect and my product range had increased. So this is one of the mistakes I made in Spring Fair. I literally only took like 19 greeting cards and a few desk pads and maybe a few art prints. And my neighbors, bless them, they kept checking in on me because they knew it was my first time, and they were like, how's it going? You know, is it okay for you? And I was like, yeah, I'm having the best time. I'm talking to so many people. I'm meeting so many new contacts and getting business cards and details. I wasn't getting orders. I had no orders at all. But I thought, I'm here for the experience. But in Top Drawer, I knew that was like my lack of products was a mistake. And then in Top Drawer, I had 80 greeting cards. Gone from 19 to 80. So my range expanded, and I was actually taking orders in Top Drawer and felt a lot more confident about that, and things were going well.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, I have a question later about how many products you think are, a good starting point. So we'll dive into that a little more. 19 is too little. Okay. We'll put a pin in that, but remember. David, how about you?
I just want to say before I start my bit, I just want to say I love that you started at Spring Fair, the longest trade show, because I've done Spring Fair and I found it mentally draining because it's 4 days and it's really, really long. They're really long days, and it's a huge, huge place at the NEC that I've not been back since.
It's 10 halls, isn't it? Like it takes ages.
Ginormous. Yeah.
I had a foot, I hurt my leg. I had to sit down through most of it because I was just it was so awesome.
It's really intense. So I think you definitely dived in at the deep end. And I was so pleased to hear that you had a really good Top Drawer spring last year, because I was at Top Drawer in February 2022. That was my worst show.
People said it was quiet.
Everyone had a bad show. So I'm so pleased that you had a good show, because the timing was completely wrong.
The store just before
the peak buying period is straight after Christmas, when all of the retailers have got empty shelves. They're getting rid of all their Christmas stock and they've got to fill it all again. So the orders will start coming in as soon as January hits. So Top Drawer in the middle of January is perfectly timed. But then, because the show was delayed, you then still had Spring Fair that was carrying on as normal. So that had gone. So there's competition with the Spring Fair that happened last year. By the end of February, the buying season was done. Everyone had done their buying, because everyone that couldn't go to the show just did their buying online. So I had no choice, because we had to do the show because we'd committed to it and it was out of our control. But it was dire.
That's so interesting. So you really have to, when you're selecting the shows, you really have to think about that buying season, and right?
Totally.
I guess you don't, if you've never done wholesale before, you don't really think of that, but it makes total sense that there's those ebbs and flows. And
definitely. So, the January 2020, the January Top Drawer is my favorite show of the year. So I always do that one. I always do PG Live, because that's a nice midpoint in the year as well. So it kind of gives me a bit of a focus on launching newness as well. I have done 3 shows in a year, and I felt that was too many. So when I did Top Drawer in the spring, January, I did PG Live, and then I did the autumn edition of Top Drawer in the same year. And I literally booked it 5 weeks before, and I did a carbon copy of what I'd done at PG. So the stand design was the same, paint color was all the same, and it was good, but I was exhausted. So I feel like 2 trade shows a year is kind of my limit. But yeah, I've done Spring Fair, not for a long time, but my favorite show is the January Top Drawer, and I love PG. They have both have very different vibes, really different vibes, but I love them both for different reasons. Part of the reason I love PG is because you get free lunch.
Yeah, that was a good
That should definitely be the main consideration when you're choosing a shop.
Good PG is very, very friendly as well.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely. I think because it doesn't feel, PG Live is run by a very small group of people. It's the people that run Progressive Reese's magazine, so it's Max Publishing, and it's just a really nice family vibe. Whereas Top Drawers run, it's very corporate, I find. You'll never have the same sales rep twice.
Wow.
Yeah, I think when I did Top Drawer, I didn't meet the sales rep, I didn't meet them. Whereas at PG, the organisers were lovely and they all came and you're okay, and they were just, it was very different vibe. Yeah, definitely.
And what I love about PG is that they do so much promo. So they do loads of free stuff for you. So they print 100 invites, postcards for you, so you can send them out to retailers, which I think is really important.
Yeah,
and that's all free. You provide the artwork, and then it gets printed for you, and then they come in the post. They put together a catalogue as well, so you can submit images and a small amount of copy to go into their catalogue, which is amazing. That goes to every buyer. They do loads of promo, and they do loads of promo in their magazine as well. So you can
catalogue there.
It's so good.
You get like a good. That was so you get like a image and a bit of text about your business. Whereas with Top Drawer, you just I've got that as well. You just get like unless you pay for it, you just have like a little listing with your name, like no visual or anything. It's just
really interesting. Thank you. It's interesting too that you're having different experiences with the same shows. This is a question for the audience I want to ask. So I'm interested in who is watching and whether you're currently wholesaling your products or whether you're thinking of an approach more like David, which is to start your wholesale at a fair. Both valid approaches, but I'm just intrigued as to who is watching and what your experience is in your art business right now. So let us know in the chat. And then we are going to move on to some questions more about like your approach and maybe some advice for the artists watching. So one thing I would love to do is have each of you show your booth. You sent me some pictures. I'm going to bring those up, and you can just walk us through just a minute or two how you go through the design process, how you set it up, if you have help, like do you have to organize walls? Just assume we know nothing and share that information with us. So anyone who wants to start?
I don't mind starting.
All right. Awesome. Let me move you up there and here we go. Take it away.
So, this was my booth at PG Live. It was a slightly different layout to Top Drawer. So both times I had the same square footage. So this was a 2x2 meter space, and at Top Drawer I think I had a 3x1. I ended up with more space, but I won't go into that right now. But I personally preferred the 3x1 to the 2x2 because it kind of felt like a bit of a cubby hole. But anyway, so how I designed my space was literally I'd already got my shelving made for my previous trade show, and they were just little plywood shelf brackets that I actually got someone to make for me, a guy who I met through a market. So he was makes lots of stuff with wood. So he made me the little freestanding card stand and these little shelf brackets, which I used Velcro. I actually used command strips to secure them to the wall, which was a bit of a disaster actually, because it's my second time trying it. The first time I did that method, the walls are beautifully flat. That was at Top Drawer. The shelving stuck on lovely and it didn't fall off. And then at PG, the walls were very warped. Obviously, they're obviously reused. And so I came in the first morning of the show and quite a lot of my shelves had all fallen on the floor. My cards were everywhere. So it was quite stressful. So it was quite a stressful start to the opening day, because I was trying to rush around trying to find you know, Velcro to stick them back on, and it was fine. But it was, you know, I think I sort of have learnt to find a better method for next time. I don't want to leave that, you sort of risk it. I don't paint my walls. I may consider painting them another time, just because I only give myself a day to set up. So I always am a bit concerned about whether if I can paint and put everything up in a day, which I probably could. So I kind of just leave the walls white as they are, and then I just go for the wood, kind of the contrast wooden shelving, really. So it's fairly simple, but that's sort of what. And then I used, I had a banner made for my show, so I used another small business. A lady made that for me, which is hanging up behind me as well. So I use it a lot for markets, and yeah.
It looks like you say it's simple, but in a way, it's also something that you can probably easily transfer to another setup, right? So I'm assuming the booths are always different, and then this way you could kind of rearrange. You know, you're always going to have some flat walls,
rearrange it.
Yeah,
yeah, so configure the shelving in different ways, and they're all like some are almost a meter, because the walls are a meter wide. So my shelving is just under, I can't remember what the width of it is. It might be 80 centimeters or something, the brackets that I had made. And I guess I can add to them as well. So I could, if I needed more, I can get some more remade. So I didn't spend huge amounts on my display, you know, just because I'm just starting and investing. I know some people have really elaborate booths and things, and spend thousands and thousands. But I think when you're starting out, it's just trying to keep it simple, keep it you know, if it looks nice, but you don't want to sort of invest thousands on it until you're sort of, you know, I don't know if I ever would want to invest thousands on it, but I don't know. I think once you're more established, it's, you know, you'd have a bit more money to sort of invest in a bigger stand. But
yeah, it's such a good reminder, not just for trade shows, but for like just in general, because I feel like that's my go-to approach with my art business. Like I need it to be perfect, and you know, the perfect packaging, and you know, it needs to look like it's going to be immediately on a big box store, like perfect. And then I look at the cost, I'm like, okay, you're gonna have to sell how many thousands of these to ever make a profit? So I think that's very solid advice that you're giving. Thank you for sharing it with us. David, I'm going to bring up your booth now.
Cool.
All right, walk us through it.
So this was from January this year's Top Drawer. So one thing I'll quickly mention is with Top Drawer, with your shell scheme stand, you get cladded walls included. So those are the kind of walls that you can see here, where you can screw into them, you can paint them. Whereas at PG Live, you're not given cladded walls as standard. You have to pay extra for those. So I've just paid for mine for my June show, for example, and you have to pay on top of that, and it's done per panel. So each one is a meter wide. So I love painting my stand. I use Valspar from B&Q, and I have this is the shade that I love. It's taken like 4 years to get to the right shade of pink that I really love. The shelving, I literally made the shelves from B&Q. They're just coving, and I use like Gorilla Glue to glue the brackets on, and then I have loads of different sizes that I can kind of mix and match depending on what my stand size is, because my stand is always slightly different. This is a 4 meter by 1.5. So they're always different sizes. I have this, it looks a kind of blue in the photo, but it's actually dark green. So it must have been the filter that I put on the photo. But this storage unit here that I've got is just a really nice plinth that I had made from a carpenter friend of mine, and it's open on the other side, and I've got some shelves in it, so I store all of my stuff in there. So it's really handy to kind of feel like I've got somewhere to stand, because I never know where to stand. I either stand behind that or out in the aisle rather than just in the middle. And I can store all of my catalogs, all of my other like backup samples and things like that. I really
like that idea. I think that's really handy to have something like that.
Yeah, because like, especially in the winter, where are you going to put your coats?
It can hide stuff. Yeah.
It hides everything, and it's actually really good storage for here as well. So I have the open side facing me in my hallway, but it means that I can store loads of stuff in there. So it's really helpful for home as well, rather than just a trade show use. So yeah, and then I have a wooden sign now. I used to do black vinyl, where I used to have the individual letters that I would have to like scrape on and everything. And I did that for a few trade shows, but they were costing 25 quid per go. And they're just disposable, so it wasn't very good for the environment. It was really annoying because I'd have to peel them off at the end of the show. So I had something permanent made. So I have a sign now, although I now think it's too small. So I need to get a new one, but I'll do that another time. And then the way I display my cards, I display them without cellophane. And I just have like teeny tiny bits of blue tack on the inside left of my card, the envelope, and then repeat on back so they stay nice and flat. And yeah, and then I just have a couple of plants. I keep it really simple. I just try to maintain my brand aesthetic. Lots of my brand is very pink based. Like if you look at my Instagram, everything's very pink, apart from the greeting cards. They're all different colors, but the brand color is pink. So I try to maintain that, you know, from my Instagram, the catalog, imagery, the trade show, just to kind of maintain a cohesive feel.
I love it. Yeah, I'm really digging this color, but I also think it's very cool that you incorporate that with your brand colors. So you really have that consistent story, whether people meet you here or then they pull you up on Instagram or your website. I think that's a really nice touch.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing yours. Natasha, I'm going to bring up yours.
Okay. So this is my display, or part of my display, from the Top Drawer show in 2022. Previous to this, my display in Spring Fair in 2020, I did choose to get the walls painted pink, and it looked great. But I didn't choose to do it for this time just to save money, because it cost me a lot, because I had them do it for me, and then you pay to get them to paint it back white at the end of the show. This time I thought I would let the cards stand out, but now I'm looking at David's. I'm like, I should have just painted it pink like yours.
Oh, no, I think your colors really pop against the white. It looks really polished and really nice. I love the vibrancy from all the cards.
Thank you. I really, really love the pink though. But then that's why I chose the pink vinyl. So I think I went overboard with all my signs and my wording, because I got Coco Natasha everywhere. But they are all separate letters, and I had to measure out where every single one was going and peel it off really slowly.
Oh God, nightmare.
It was so time consuming. Like the whole setup took way longer than it should have. And I love both of your storage ideas, David and Melissa. You can't quite see it on the picture, but I just have like a large cardboard white IKEA box underneath my tables where I try to shove like my coat and everything in. But yeah, your idea for storage was great. I also brought 2 IKEA desks with me to lay out like my desk pads, my notepads, the to-do lists, just so I can display like what a desk would look like in real life if they had my products on them. And so buyers can see what things would look like on display, like the flatter items that don't go on shelves. And speaking of shelves, I've had a nightmare both times with trying to source the perfect shelves for the cards, because for my first show, I used the IKEA picture ledge shelves, and I felt like they just come out too far from the wall and created, they created like a lot of a shadow. So I actually cut the picture my dad cut the picture ledges in half for these ones, and we stuck them, drilled them into the walls. But then I found they were too thin for my and then I'm glad you said about the blue tack, David, because I blue tacked every single one of those cards, and that took ages. And I thought that was a terrible idea, because what if people want to take them off the walls?
Oh, they do.
But I thought, is this the thing to do? Like, does everyone else do this? But I mean, I had to, otherwise they'd be falling off the shelves because they were so thin. Yeah, I feel like the both times I've been has just been a huge learning curve. And I think when my next trade show comes, I will do the shelves different again. I don't know what I'll do, but something in the middle of the large picture ledge and the little thin strip of wood that I've got.
At least with the blue tacking thing, I try to keep all of my samples in a trade show box and try not to touch them. I have done, because sometimes like my stock and my inventory is not very well managed, and I've sold a card on Etsy that I don't have, and I have to go into my sample box and then remember to replace it. But once you've done it once, I try not to touch them. So it's a lot of work in the beginning, but then it shouldn't. The first time I did it, I used double-sided tape, which was a massive mistake, because then you literally can't use the card again. So yeah, the tragedy I've had when I've sold a card on Etsy and I've not been able to use the card, because you can't send a customer a card that's sticky taped with double-sided tape 3 times.
Yeah, I think that would get you a bad review.
Yeah.
Natasha, I just wanted to say, I think it's really cool that you have your website on here personally. I think that's kind of a cool touch on the wall. And I think it's nice to see this setup too, because your product-based business is a little different than the other two, in that you have a range of products outside of the cards as well.
Yeah,
so it's nice to see both approaches.
Yeah, the cards came like second. I only started putting my illustrations on cards just before Spring Fair in 2020. So that's why I only had 19 of them. And I thought my art prints and desk pads and stationery would be the main thing that people would want. But no, it's greeting cards at trade shows for me anyway.
So interesting. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. I'm going to bring up the next question here, which is, now you don't all have to answer it, but if you do think you can, I think people would really appreciate it. And that is, what is your personal average cost to exhibit all in? So we're talking booth fees, materials, if you hire help, if you're getting walls painted, whatever, for that initial setup. Do you remember? Did you keep track, or did you try to forget?
I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I mean, it's thousands. I spend thousands. You have to consider the stand. You have to consider accommodation. You have to consider all the materials, and especially if you're doing a trade show for the first time, everything is going to be new. So, I mean, I've got to a point now where I can reuse a lot of stuff because I've invested in already. But it cost loads before. But I think for the stand on its own, I think I've ranged between 2,000 to 2.5, maybe 3 for next year, plus all of the other stuff. So it's a lot.
I spent for top drawer, I think PG was similar. I did actually break it all down because I wrote a blog post because I thought other people might be interested to know how much each little bit cost.
Her website is in the description, so go find it.
So it's so totally for top drawer, I spent all in. I spent £2,500. That included my stand fee and then everything. I was lucky. I had friends who lived in London, so I could stay with them. So I didn't have to pay for like accommodation or car parking. So I think that really helped. Otherwise, obviously that I'd have had to have stayed in a hotel or something. Just making your lunch every day, because obviously buying food at the show is expensive. So it's just little things like that. I didn't spend. My biggest expense for me on my first trade show was my catalogue, because I had a graphic designer design it for me because I wanted it to look really professional, and I'm not the best with tech. I'm an illustrator. I'm getting better with technology and stuff with doing my designs, but I'm nowhere like a digital illustrator or something. I'm sort of very old school, do very little any digital editing to anything I do. And I didn't feel confident being able to lay out a catalogue, and I wanted it to look lovely. So that was my biggest expense, was using a graphic designer. But now I still so she still updates bits because she's done it once. Now it's just adding a few bits in each time. So then it's not as big a cost.
Was that part of your 2,500 for that?
Yeah, so that was all. Yeah, and printing my catalogue. So I did keep it quite tight. but already I'm doing top drawer in autumn, and the standards, the prices are just crazy now. Compared to what I did the previous show, I think my stand is, I can't remember now. It was about, I think it's about £2,500 for my stand, and then there's a marketing fee on top of that now. So already it's, but obviously I've got my fixtures and things now, so it's I don't really want to be spending too much, just because it's you're going to take a lot of orders to make it back and things. So
Tasha, do you want to answer it?
I mean, I haven't looked at the prices since I last done it, so I know that they've like increased dramatically. When I first exhibited in Spring Fair 2020, I was part of the Greeting Cards Association, and they gave like a discount to first-time exhibitors. And I think with this discount, you were put in like the newbie section of Spring Fair. So people would come looking for like new designers, which was really good. And I think this price was like £900 plus VAT, but this included your signage and your lighting, and that's it. But like Top Drawer doesn't include that in the price to begin with. So I think the first time I did it all in was probably like 1,600. And that was with the catalogue and travel and accommodation in 2020. And obviously since then it went up. And then I went to Top Drawer, and I think all in then was about £2,000 for everything.
Wow.
And I dread to think what it is now.
Wow. So that is definitely not a small investment.
The size that I got in both shows was 1 meter by 3 meter.
Okay. So that's a little smaller too than, David, the space that you had, right? For example. So that's also where some of the cost differences might come in.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's all done by square meter.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, then I have a question which might be a little tricky, but I think this is something that a lot of people thinking about this kind of approach for their business can grapple with. So now that we have heard the costs, do you think, for you personally, trade fairs have been a good investment for your business? Why or why not? And how do you measure that?
I don't know who's going to go first. Shall I go first?
Anyone who feels open to answer.
I would say financially, the first one, no, not at all. I didn't get one order. It was more like a very large learning experience for me, a very expensive one. So financially, no, but experience-wise, and it's the direction I knew I wanted to go in. So like knowledge and learning, and that to have that opportunity to go and learn from all the people like around me, all the other exhibitors, they were giving me so much advice and proper like took me under their wing, and the community and the friends that you make doing these shows, that's great. And I'm glad that I went. I don't regret it at all, even though financially it was a total loss. Even though I didn't do well in terms of orders. Even after the show ended, it was lockdown, and then I didn't follow up with all those stockists and retailers that I'd met, because I mean it was months until they opened. And then Top Drawer, I think yes, it was a good investment, and because I had orders, but I also managed to get a very large order from a large retailer, TK Maxx, and I don't know if I would have got that if I was there, because they contacted me before I went and was interested in placing an order. And because I said I'm going to be at Top Drawer, we can meet in person, speak face to face. I'm not sure whether it's because I went to Top Drawer that I got that order or not, but I'm going to see it as it was a good investment that time.
That's really good. That's an interesting perspective too, that sometimes the investment is not an immediate payoff, but it is part of building the business that you want to build long term with wholesale. So really interesting perspective. Anyone else have thoughts on this question?
You go.
Yes, I would say for me it's been a good investment. My first trade show was a really good investment. I think I made I was happy to make, I think I made back my orders back, sort of covered my my investment to the show. So I was really happy about that. And then I've since then have got regular stockists through it. So that still order from me. So which is kind of what you want, really. You want to get the repeat. So I've got some really good customers through that. When I did the second trade show at PG Live, I didn't get very many stockists. So I think I only took 3 orders at that show. One of them was from an existing stockist who I'd met at the previous show. So obviously the cost, my investment to my return was not great on that show. So, but then I sort of learned a lot from that show as well, from the greeting card industry. So I think I wasn't really aware of, like David talked about earlier, about the distribution. So I did meet some distributors and learn about that side of the business. I met some greeting card agents, and so that was it. Although I didn't get many orders, I learned quite a lot from doing it from other publishers as well. So it was worthwhile. It sort of put me off applying again for this year, because I can only really at the moment afford to do 1 trade show a year. So I kind of decided that maybe I wouldn't do that one again because it wasn't so great, but it wouldn't put me off in future. Maybe I would do it. But
well, from those 2 answers, it almost sounds like you just have to accept that it's not 1 trade show and you're done anyway, right? So it's almost like you have to show up once a year or twice a year, and that if you average it out across those and you are, getting repeat customers with larger orders, that is the way to look at the investment. But that's maybe even better to know that when you're talking about £1,000 to £3,000 as an investment, that's not the end of it, but you might have to keep showing up.
Yeah.
David, what are your thoughts on this?
I definitely think it's a good investment. Even with the bad show that I had in February 2022, I had some really good chats with, so I'll talk about the bad first and then I'll get that out of the way. So I had, because obviously it's a great opportunity to catch up with friends in the industry, because, there's so much camaraderie in the greeting card industry, which I love. And I was talking to a few publishers who had also had a bad show, and we tried to look at a trade show from a different perspective, in that it's not necessarily about making all the orders back to cover your stand necessarily. Obviously that's great and you want that, but it's also, I see doing a trade show as a marketing exercise, and I see it as part of a marketing budget. Not that I necessarily have a marketing budget, but that's what I put it to, because I have stockists that will only place orders at trade shows. I'll get to meet buyers of like national chains and supermarkets that will come to trade shows, and that's the only way in. And it's also the one time where you're meeting all of your stockists, potential stockists, all at the same time. I don't have the time, resources or money to go up and down the country and go and see all of my stockists. I would love to, but I don't have time to do that. So this is a chance where everyone comes to me all in one go. And I've been lucky enough to work with some, I took on my Australian distributor from the show. They literally placed the order at the show. That doesn't normally happen very often with like a distributor or a large retailer. Normally it's, we'll have a look, and then can you submit some samples after, that kind of thing, and you share exchanges on email and everything. So I have to kind of look at the whole year's worth of, for example, Scribbler, I met the buyers at a trade show and I've been working with them. So I kind of have to average out the cost, but then if I hadn't been at the trade show, I wouldn't have been working with them. I work with a supermarket now and I met those buyers at a trade show. So for me, at the beginning, I would always aim to try and get the orders to pay back the show. But now I don't let it worry me so much. It's more just about, you never know who you're going to meet. You might hope to meet the buyers from Oliver Bonus or Selfridges or someone like that, but you never know who's going to stop by. You never know who's going to be keen. I had no plans on meeting an Australian distributor, but they're a core part of my revenue now. So that's, I definitely think there's still a place for it. I think, with the rise of Instagram, wholesale websites and trade platforms like Fair and Ankle Store, those are great. but there's still so many buyers and retailers that I meet that say, I love to see the product before I commit. They want to, it's a tactile product. They want to see what the card is like. They want to see what envelopes you're using. They want to have that exchange in person about, and it's getting to know you as well. You know, your brand is your personality. And I feel like a trade show is that opportunity to do that. So they are expensive, they are exhausting, but I still love them. They're so much fun, and you know, you never know what's going to happen. So I would even say that even after a bit of a poor top draw 2022, that was just because of timing, unfortunately. But it was still a good experience. It still gives me another focal point to launch newness as well. I think if I didn't have those focal points in the year, I would not become lazy, but it gives me a deadline. I have to get new stuff by June, for example. So, you know, I have to work backwards. I have to, you know, with the trade show, that means I have to get the catalogs done and printed by a certain time. That means I have to get my photography done before that, the print done before that, artwork signed off before that. So, you know, launching newness is normally like a 6-month cycle anyway, but it keeps me on track.
That was such an inspiring answer. I really like how you presented that. No, really. I was like, wow, I want to go to a trade show. No, mind you, I don't have any products yet. So I'm very far from that, but I want to go now. This sounds really incredible. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring up an audience question here. I think you've alluded to it a little bit, but the question from Michelle Kemp is a wholesale catalog a good investment? And what should you send with them to stores you want to send them to? So is that even something that you all do? Are you reaching out to stores outside of the trade fairs?
Yes. So, because I'm not doing a trade show this year, I haven't booked one this year, but I want to definitely do one again. Hopefully, maybe January top draw. I've just been emailing all these potential retailers, and I just send a PDF catalog. So I don't send my physical catalog, one, because it's not updated at the minute, and it's a huge investment. But if I was to do a trade show, then yes, I would definitely get them printed, because I handed out loads when I was at Top Draw and Spring Fair, because people like to take them home and flick through them and look.
Yeah, I also print. I have a PDF version of my printed catalogue, but I also print them for the show. And it's an extra marketing material to send in the post. Sometimes, you know, you can email people, but things just get lost. Or if you're using things like MailChimp, for example, they could end up in spam or junk or whatever. So it's just a nice extra touch to send in the post. So yeah, I definitely still think they're a good investment. They are expensive. And obviously it's a lot of work to do it in what, you know, to design it. I do mine in InDesign. But then now that I've got it, it doesn't take too much to update it, because it's just adding an extra couple of pages.
Yeah, I personally really like to have a catalogue as well, and again have it as a PDF and as a physical copy. But yeah, prior to, like, when I have it updated, if I'm doing a trade show, I will print them, and then I will post out to my my stockists. I will sort of send all my stockists, and then any contacts that I've made through trade shows, you know, that maybe haven't placed an order yet, but and post them on one of my new catalogues. Sometimes a sample as well of a greeting card they might like to see, so it's quite nice to pop one of those in as well. And they'll also want to probably know pricing as well, so maybe a price list, or obviously I'd pop that on an email as well.
Makes sense. And you did say you actually made a real investment too, because you hired a graphic designer to do that, right? So you must have really thought it was valuable.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I personally just didn't feel confident, partly due to my time as well, but also I just wanted it to look professional. So yeah, I did use a designer to help me with it, and yeah, it was worth that investment, I think. Yeah.
I'm going to ask the audience now. This is your last chance. If you want to pop any additional questions into the chat, we have time for maybe one more. We will end on that. And before that, this is my final question here for the artists. which is for the artists that are watching, that are interested in creating this income stream. What do you think is the hardest thing and the best thing about exhibiting at trade fairs? Any thoughts?
The hardest thing for me at Top Draw specifically was the insane imposter syndrome that I had before the show started. Like, so before the show starts, you can walk around and see everyone's stands and you're like, oh my God, everyone's looks amazing. I was like, why am I here? I am not ready, even though I'd done one before this. I was like, I'm not ready. My cards don't look like that. I'm not confident. I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh.
You just got to take a big breath. The reason why you're there, there's a reason why you've got all these cards, and just you need to back yourself. I think that was the hardest thing for me. And yeah, it's harder. It's easier said than done. So that was the hardest thing. The best thing was the community and being with all your friends and meeting new people and meeting new small businesses and retailers and speaking about different parts of the industry, just learning so many different things. So it's an experience where you learn so much. And I think that was the best thing for me. And not only learning, but making friends as well.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. I've got some really, really great friends in the greeting card industry. One of my best friends is Sarah from Stormy Night, and we've now manufactured it. So when we exhibit at the same trade show, we're next to each other. So we did it in January. We're doing it at PG, and then we've rebooked next year, and we're going to be next to each other again. So that's really nice to be amongst pals, because it's a really nice industry. I know I said it earlier, but I love the fact that the greeting card industry is very open. Obviously, you know, it is competitive because you want to make business, but there is room for everyone. Everyone's working with the same stockists and the same retailers. And if you're all there kind of for the same thing, but you know, everyone's got a different style, different approach. That's kind of where the differentiation is. But yeah, everyone's willing to help, and yeah. So I do love the camaraderie of it.
And what do you think is the hardest thing?
Equally setup. I know what I'm doing now, but it's still hard because it takes so long. I do it over 2 days. Obviously, I have to drive from Bristol, and then I normally do it over, like I said, I do it over 2 days. So I'll do the driving, the unloading, and the painting in one day, then go and check into my hotel and breathe. And then the following day, I'll do all of my shelf stuff and then all my styling and everything. And I say styling, it's just putting cards up. So that's really tiring. And that's before the show's even started. And then you kind of have to have this like mental endurance where, you know, if it's Top Draw, for example, you're right at the back of the hall. So you've got to wait hours for people to come from the entrance all the way through. So nothing happens until like 11 or 11:30. So you're there at like 9:30 when the show starts, and there's a lot of waiting around, and everyone's nervous. Everyone is, you know, wondering how the day is going to be. So I think the hardest part is like the mental endurance. A bit like what you said, you know, you do have to kind of just get into it and just hope for the best. But then also, you know, you don't know who you're going to meet, and you might get a really exciting conversation. You might get a really exciting order that you didn't think you were going to get. So, you know, you get the rush from that. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I had no idea. That's so interesting. It's like doors open. So interesting. Kind of a letdown. Melissa, any thoughts on this one?
I think the hardest thing for me was, I've done 2 now, but obviously for the first one, it was just starting the whole thing from scratch. Was just the amount of work that went into planning for that trade show was really intense. And it was a good 6 months of just every minute I could get spare to try and do some work towards it. There was a lot, you know, it was a massive learning curve for me. The second one was still a lot of work, but I think it felt less daunting, and it felt a bit easier because I'd, you know, a lot of it was already sort of set up. So updating bits and bits sort of, but the first one was just, I think, the level of work and was, I don't know if, I think I naively just sort of wanted to go for it. And then I always feel I work best if I just set myself a deadline, and then I work best under pressure. And I think if I'd have realised when I booked the show how much work was involved, it probably would have put me off. So I think I think it was just best just to get, it just, sometimes you just have to force yourself to do stuff. So it really pushed me out of my comfort zone. But I think because of that, I got like a huge sense of achievement afterwards. So I was on a massive high, and it was a real accomplishment. So I think for me, that was one of the best things for me was that feeling that I got afterwards. I felt really proud of myself, and I felt like I'd done it. So it was nice to have that achievement as well.
That's a beautiful thought. Yeah, diving in. So I have one question here, another question from Michelle. That'll be our final question. And she says she's so excited to learn today. I hope it was helpful. How much cash should one bring for change? And is a credit card reader smart to invest in? Now, I've never done a trade show, but I would think that you're not actually doing any transactions and you're just like maybe getting some orders and then you send all the information and everything. But how does that actually work from the people that have done it before?
So I don't take any money at the trade show. Everything's done on a pro forma basis for first-time customers, which I always get really nervous about, actually, because I have had several people just ghost me. I've had people place an order at the show and I'll say, is pro forma okay on the first invoice? Then you'll be on 30-day terms afterwards. Yeah, that's fine. And then you never hear from them again. So that's really challenging. And then obviously if existing stockists place an order at the show, that's great. I process it and then I send out the order and then they're on 30-day payment terms. So yeah, it's normally done on an invoice basis after the show. Yeah,
you're not allowed to take cash, I don't think, at the show, are you? I think they're
okay.
I think it's in the contract that you sign with the,
I didn't read that.
I think you're not. I don't think you're allowed to physically do a transaction in person like that. So
yeah, and you're not giving them any product either, right? I mean, that's all being shipped.
No.
You're just
you might give them a sample or something, but not.
All right. Well, thank you for explaining that. And I did not mean to show this one. Here we go. We're done with that. So now this is the last chance for you artists of this interview. Is there anything we haven't touched upon that you really wanted to share? Any tips, anything that you want to make sure you get in before we wrap up this live stream? Any last thoughts?
My best advice, if you're wanting to do your first trade show, learn from my mistakes and go visit one first and get inspiration, chat to the exhibitors, ask about their fixtures if they got time. Obviously, it's very busy. But yeah, just go to one first before just diving in.
I think my top advice would be know your figures off by heart. The questions that are by, if they're interested, the first thing they will ask is, what is your pricing? What is your minimum order? What's your carriage paid, as in the threshold to get free shipping? Do you have any stockists in my area? They're going to want to know that. So have a really good idea about where your stockists currently are, because if they say, do you have any existing stockists in Oxford? And you go, I don't know, you're going to lose out. They'll move on. So it's good. It's a really good idea to know everything off by heart. It just shows that you're professional. If you can reel off all this information really easily and quickly, those are the things that they're going to want to know straight away. And also I would say be comfortable in, if they ask you something and you don't have the answer right away, I would just be confident and say, let me take your email or have a chat and we'll pick up on this later, because they might I'm trying to think of something that they've asked me that I've not wanted to answer straight away. Sometimes it's like, oh, would you give exclusivity? And it's a particular area where you have other stockists and you can't give an answer right away. You have to, go away and really consider where your stockists are and, So
That's a good list of questions for people who've never done a show. I would not have been aware of that. So thanks for sharing that.
I think my advice probably would be just to wait till you feel ready, really. I think don't feel rushed into doing one unless you feel, I think for me, it took me probably 3 years since I sort of started my business of selling my greeting cards to feel confident enough and have a big enough a range of cards to confidently go to a trade show. I think it's better to go with a good assortment, so people have shops that are coming to have a lot to have a good selection to choose from, rather than a small range, because they are such a lot of money to invest in, and it is a big investment, and you do kind of want to get some return on that. Well, for personally, I did, to be able to sort of continue with the business, really. So don't rush. If you're not feeling ready, just wait a bit, but then I'd say just do it when you feel ready to.
My other bit of boring advice would be public liability insurance. So when you exhibit at PG Live, you have to have it. With Top Drawer, you don't have to have it personally, but they will add it onto your invoice. And I found, because I was doing more than one trade show a year, it was cheaper for me to get my own public liability, public indemnity, whatever insurance myself. And then with Top Drawer, for example, you can upload your documents to have that waived from your invoice. So I didn't know that straight away. I was probably about a year or two in before I knew to do that. So that was another piece of handy advice.
Yeah, sometimes those boring parts are quite important. So thanks for sharing that.
Just in case people get hurt by a greeting card that's fallen on them.
or by those little, the warped walls and things falling off. Not just greeting cards.
The other piece of advice I would also think about is the different trade shows give different things. So I touched upon it earlier when I said that Top Drawer give you cladded walls. PG Live don't as standard, so you have to buy them yourselves. But PG Live give you lighting, for example, which is really helpful. And I would say always get lighting. Never, ever not have lighting. So I personally get a fluorescent tube because I like the even lighting compared to spots, just personally. So with PG Live, for example, you get either a free fluorescent tube or I think 2 spotlights per X amount of meters. I can't remember what it is. So you can choose between, but I would always pay when you do things like Top Drawer, pay for lighting. Don't get it without, because everyone around you will have lighting and you will look like you're in the dark.
Those are some really, really handy tips. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts? Otherwise, I will wrap this up. I know, Melissa, I promised you we'd try to stick close to an hour. So.
Oh, no, thank you. It's been really, I've really enjoyed it. Thanks. It's been really interesting to hear from David and Natasha as well.
Likewise.
Well, thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise, vulnerably, your real stories. And I'm feeling very inspired, and I'm hoping that everyone watching got a lot out of you sharing your stories. So thank you so much. I'm going to end the live stream here and play a little outro. While I do that, if you're watching, make sure I've put it on the little outro video that's going to play, but it's much easier. It's also in the description. Every artist's links. Check them out on Instagram, their websites, and so forth. We know it's all about community for us artists, and so I bet they would love to hear from you as well. All right. Have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
What a brilliant conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you got a lot out of it. And make sure to subscribe because in 2 weeks we're going to have another chat. And also in the future, there will be a part 2 of this conversation with artists who have experience showing at trade shows, but for art licensing / surface pattern design. So similar, but different. And until then, make sure to check out the previous 10 episodes on my channel.